In a world full of uncertainty, fear, and pressure, resilience isn't just a nice to have, it's actually a necessity. But here's the truth: resilience isn't just built at rock bottom, it's built in the everyday. It's a developmental process. It's not just a skill you tap into during a crisis. It's a lifestyle you live on purpose. That's why Michelle Dickinson created the Resilience as a Lifestyle methodology to help leaders, teams, educators, and individuals just like you build strength before the storm even hits. In this episode, we'll explore how to turn intentional mindset shifts into lasting personal power. This conversation matters more now than ever because resilience isn't what saves you, it's what sustains you. So let's talk about it right here on the flip side. Trauma, toxic stress, broken habit, and hurting heart don't define destiny, but peace isn't passive. It requires an exchange. To create a flip and access peace in the middle of the pieces, you are challenged to make an exchange of the lies that have kept you mentally hostage in basement moments. Resilience isn't about bouncing back, but bouncing forward. Living Strong, the flip side of adversity, brings powerful stories and fearless conversations from experts in the field of business, relationships, emotional, physical, and mental health, and faith-based communities. Each episode creates a brave space with powerful tools from authentic connections. Tune in as we dig in with Dr. Jackson on the flip side of adversity. Welcome to the flip side of adversity. I am Dr. Veirdre Jackson, the CEO and creative behind Living Strong Consulting. And if you follow me at all, you know my heart for the conversation of resilience. That's literally the entire reason why I started the flip side of adversity. There's a whole lot of pain that we could be talking about, but why can't we just focus on hope, resilience, and the strategies to get there? So I'm excited to bring an expert on the conversation to the flip side of adversity. Now, her bio is extensive, and I'm sure we will jump into her areas of expertise and her business, but I just want you to listen to the titles that Michelle Dickinson holds: Resilience Visionary, Burnout Interventionalist, TED Talk and keynote speaker. She is an author, a professor, a workplace facilitator, a culture architect. I love that. I want to dive into that. Consultant and educator advocate. We are so excited to have a conversation around resilience and sustaining it as a lifestyle in our lives. So welcome to the flip side of adversity, Michelle Dickinson.
Thank you so much, Dr. Jackson, for having me. I'm so thrilled to be with you.
I've been looking forward to our conversation because I spend so much time helping people process what they've been through that I really dedicated the entire platform of the flip side of adversity around resilience and consistently tell and say that what we've been through does not have to define where we are going. So to have someone like you on the platform who has literally created a methodology around this concept of a lifestyle of resilience is really exciting. And I first want to start off by just asking you, how do you define resilience in and of itself?
Well, you said it best in the opening. Resilience is not something that we have to wait to hit rock bottom in order to build. And so that's why we have resilience as a lifestyle, is because we want people to realize every single day we have an opportunity to build our resilience. And it's through our habits and it's through our mindset that we can do that. So we can be better prepared to deal with the adversity, to ebb and flow with it so it doesn't devour us.
There's an image that sometimes I use in trainings that I offer in looking at resilience as almost like surfing and
Mhm.
recognizing how we keep our balance because life is going to continue to provide us with storms. Is there an experience, a perspective that actually brought you to this work to take such a deep dive?
A couple of things. I had my own story, but then I started this work as an advocate for mental health to normalize the narrative around mental illness. But something always nagged at me in terms of, why are we waiting to hit a dark spot? Why are we not doing things proactively to prevent burnout, to prevent some of the clinical diagnoses that come down the road from the sheer neglect or running on the hamster wheel? So there's that piece that I said, why are we not doing more ahead of it? And then there's my own story where I lost my job and ended my marriage all in 1 week. And so had to navigate that, right? Had to find ways to navigate that. And I felt pretty equipped to do it. But most people, something comes along, it takes them down.
Mhm.
So, yeah, I thought we need to do more to educate people of things they can be doing every day so they don't have to just sit there and wait for something to happen.
This concept of not waiting, I think sometimes we as human beings will self sabotage and hold ourselves hostage until not only is there a crisis externally, but then there's literally a crisis internally. And we just don't have the bandwidth to be able to sustain. And so,
Yeah.
when you, as you have coached thousands and thousands of hours with individuals, what are some things that you are noticing that holds people hostage or paralyzes them in and preventing them from being proactive?
Like you said, have coached thousands of people, and most folks are coming to me when they sense they're on the verge of burnout, which is great because they're not actually there yet. So we have a conversation. I would say it's innocent for the most part. It's people being overly committed and passionate about the work they're doing to the point that they neglect themselves. Educators are a perfect example of that. I've never met an educator that doesn't feel like they need to give more of themselves after they've already given more of themselves. So it's getting people to realize you literally cannot pour from an empty cup. You have to take care of yourself. And you have to get the impact of the people that love you around you who are getting a watered down version of you.
Hmm.
So
That image of a watered down version just touches my soul. And you mentioned educators. You truly are, as it was shared in many of your titles, as an educator advocate. Why do you have such a special place in your heart for educators?
That's such a great question. When I started my business and developed resilience as a lifestyle, I didn't target a specific area or vertical. I allowed the energy to take me, and it took me into the educator space because so many educators overextend themselves now to the point where they're depleted and they've forgotten why they loved to, be an educator in the first place, and they're leaving the teaching profession. So it makes me nervous about the future of education without those teachers, those passionate teachers that truly do care, but they just have nothing left to give. So I found myself becoming an advocate because the work that we were doing was actually having them fall back in love with the work they were doing because they had their footing again and they could appreciate why they decided to be teachers. They weren't feeling resentful or exhausted any longer. And so I think that's why, is because I know it works and I want to help them.
Yes. You mentioned resentful and losing sight of their why. We have many educators who listen to this podcast. I'm curious, could you give them a few symptoms and signs that you are headed down the road of burnout? Not to point them out or shame them, but just helping to raise their awareness.
I would say the loss of joy in the simple things that they once loved. The outlets that would recharge them no longer recharge them. Like even their baseline disposition, right? They find themselves unable to have the level of patience that they know they can have because they're simply depleted. And it's also, not knowing when enough is enough and just continuing to give until they get sick or something happens and it's just exacerbated by the fact that they're exhausted. So it's the little things. I would first look and see if the things that you love are no longer even an option because you just are too exhausted.
Mm, that becoming self-aware piece is huge.
Huge.
When I talk with educators, and I'm curious about your take on this, and it's okay if we're not on the same page, but when I'm actually working with educators, I am very hesitant in this season and time in referring to self-care plans during a conversation around burnout because I've found that in some cases, one, it has been overused and misused, and in some cases weaponized. And so
Yeah.
I am very cautious about ever talking about self-care. Very seldom will you ever hear me talk about it anymore because I feel like our systems have placed a weight on our educators and then also made them the ones to find the solution for lifting a weight that they aren't even putting on themselves. And so I'm really cautious about self-care, but I do talk about community care and creating a culture of care and a
Mhm.
system of care. So in your descriptions, a culture architect is very intriguing to me.
Mhm.
First of all, this is almost a sandwich I'm giving you. I'd love to hear your perspective on this conversation of self-care. And then
Yes.
how does your philosophy around resilience actually connect to culture, not
Yeah.
just a tip or a tool?
Self-care, I feel the same way about the term self-care as you do. We're totally on the same page. No, we are because listen, it's kind of like telling somebody, do all of this work and oh, take care of yourself. And it's like self-care, people don't even know what that even means anymore. And it's kind of gotten this watered down like insinuation, right? And people might think, what is that? Is that a bubble bath? No, a bubble bath is not going to unravel. It's not going to help me, compounded stress for a month. One bubble bath isn't going to do it. So I'm with you. Our philosophy with resilience as a lifestyle is no, 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 just start with the staples. Start with the staples diet. I'm talking
The elements.
that's like Maslow's hierarchy of basic need. You have to take care of the needs, the basics. Then you can start to have a shift in your perspective about, how adversity and stress shows up, right? You can't
Yeah.
see clearly. You cannot create from a space of depletion. So that's how I look at that. Culture architect is when what we're doing simultaneously, like, so we just recently did a very powerful program in Frisco, Texas. The schools that we have always been in, the majority, we are shifting the needle in the culture because there's a different narrative happening when you get a bunch of folks in a specific building, all sort of singing from the same hymnal, doing similar things, encouraging similar things in each other, stepping away from the complaining and the judgment that is so detrimental to our mental well-being. And it creates a culture that is much more conducive for healthy exchanges with one another, even in the face of stress. So when we say culture architect, it's through the impact of really reaching individuals within the same environment.
Can you give us an example of how shifting people from a place of complaining and because that can become a slippery slope? Can you give us
Sure.
some examples of what it might look like or sound like in a culture
Yeah.
where people have intentionally made that shift?
Yeah. Yeah. So the average person that comes to me doesn't realize they have agency. Something as basic as they have agency. The average person coming to me is sitting waiting for their external experience, their external influences and environment to change in order for them to give themselves the chance to feel good, right? And take better care of themselves. I always hear it when Susie goes off to college, when I get a co-teacher in my classroom, when this happens next year, when I'm in this school next year, then I'm going to start taking care of myself. When you remind people they have more agency and to stop waiting for anything outside of them to change in order to care for themselves, you shift the needle because then they start to realize I put the oxygen mask on me before anything else. And I stop waiting for those people out there that keep wanting to take every last drop of my energy because we know that that's what's happening.
Mm-hmm.
And I start making me a priority because I have a say and I have agency.
Yes. So when I remember that I have agency, I have power, I actually can make a decision that will empower me. How do you help people avoid the conversation around guilt? Because I think this is
Yeah.
transcending
Mhm.
the school. This is literally, I'm thinking of multiple people in almost any field that they're passionate about what they're doing and giving. And then they're saying, oh, I could, but so and so needs me. I could, but I feel guilty if I'm not always available for this person or for that thing. How do you help people move past that guilt?
Yeah, and it's so common, right? I feel like every educator I've ever coached just will give, and there's no hesitation in continuing to ask of them, which drives me absolutely nuts. So I turn it around and say, get the impact of always saying yes to everybody and saying, because when you say yes to everybody outside of you, you say no to you. So get the impact of that. Don't you want to show up the best version of you in your marriage, in your
Mm.
family, the best version of you to those little ones that you said I want to have a positive influence in their lives. Like if you could take a step back and get the big picture of the impact of being on, zero being on fumes every day, right? I try to reach people by having them realize that it is the old oxygen mask. You have got to
Mhm.
put that oxygen mask on yourself. If you want to show up the best version of yourself and you want to be the biggest contribution to the people that you love in your life and the students that you get to work with every day.
Yes, and you're worthy of it. You're worth it. This is not a conversation around being guilty. You are
Yeah.
actually offering them more when there is more of you, when you are more full, as opposed to continuing to only give them the scraps. But
And and I tell them too, no job is worth your mental health and your well-being. Like it's come on, it's a job. I know you love your job, but no job is worth depleting yourself. Like it goes back to the basics. We all deserve joy in our life. We all deserve to feel good in our life. Life is so precious and sometimes makes us take a step back and realize how short it is when we see people that we love struggle or lose their battle with cancer, God forbid. Like, I just want people to realize they are entitled and they should feel that level of joy.
joy
You deserve it.
is one of my core words. I'm curious, what brings you joy?
Uh, Honestly, it's like I saw this post the other day on Instagram. It literally is the little things. It's slow mornings. It's a good cup of coffee. It's it's sitting in the morning sun in either prayer or meditation. It's walking my dogs in the park, It's little things. That's joy. It's being around people you love and who love you. That's
Yes.
joy.
And you're really unpacking for some as we're talking about this lifestyle of resilience. It doesn't have to be about this big workshop or this 2 hour experience. It is the small, tiny building blocks that could seem insignificant to someone else, but
Mm.
for you, that 5 minutes is just the next step in your joy path.
Yeah.
I love
Yeah.
how simple you're making it and so clear at the same time. When I've talked about resilience, whether it's in school settings or the workplace or in ministry or in nonprofits, I've often started with leaders first and making sure they understand the significance of resilience
Mhm.
because I truly believe that the culture, the system within an organization starts from the head. So,
Yeah.
why do you why is resilience so important from your view for leaders to operate from that place to be effective?
People need to lead by example. It's one thing to have someone coming in and doing a whole big, a whole big rah rah conversation. I've done so many convocations and I'm just like, stop investing money in convocations and start investing money in your people, like sustainable programs, like. So it really does start with leadership demonstrating that they get it and they are actually walking the walk and talking the talk and putting the support that is necessary behind their staff. You
Yeah.
know, it, they have to set the tone. When I was in the corporate setting, it's even the leaders that are willing to go first and tell their own vulnerable story. It's like human, make it real. Have people not feel so disconnected, but realize that we're all just trying to do the best we can.
I had a I was leading a session and one of the leaders literally said, I can't have a bad day because I've got to be the strongest one in the room all the time for my team. And I said in that moment, then you have sent the message to your entire team that they do not have permission to be
Yeah,
off. if
yeah.
if you will not allow yourself to be human as a leader, then you're literally robbing your teams of recognizing that it is okay, and can we have an open platform to actually talk about it, be honest about it, and then strategize to support one another around it.
So true. It's so, so true, right? Like, and it doesn't have to be like where you're diminishing your leadership. It just has to be that you just demonstrate that it's okay to need to explain that you might need something, because like you said, it's that subtle permission for them to also recognize and speak up and get what they need.
Yes. So you have tools and books to be able to support people through this process. Can you tell us a little bit about some of your work?
Absolutely. So we do a lot of interesting work, and like I said, educators seem to be where our value was most needed. We provide resilience. We call it personalized resilience training, one-on-one resilience training. We have a team that handles and does one-on-one resilience training, but it's so nice because it's not a long-term codependent type format. It's 6 to 8 sessions, and it's very focused. We have
Mhm.
a very deep dive resilience audit we do. We get people to take a step back and take inventory of what they're doing because our methodology is very simple. We are what we repeatedly think, and we are what we repeatedly do. So if we can tackle it from that perspective, we're really just giving them training on how to feel better, have more energy, handle stress better, and we move the needle with that. We also are providing de-escalation training. We recognize we are living in a world where there might be aggressive parents in school districts that are not very nice to our teachers. So we've built a program that gives them what I call Jedi mind trick tools to help them de-escalate situations and maintain their authority as educators, right? And not be diminished by the aggressive parent who doesn't maybe understand and is coming at them. So we really want to equip them to have those conversations and hold their own. So we do that as well. But then we also do professional development trainings as well. Everything from overcoming overwhelm to just resilience as a lifestyle, giving them fundamentals and how to take better care and own their leadership.
When I think about this concept of having to find a way to de-escalate a situation, I know that when I'm working with teens, we often talk about brain states and how once someone is dysregulated, literally their amygdala gets in the driver's seat and they're just hijacked. When you're talking about resilience, how do you connect that to emotional regulation and
Mhm.
emotional balance?
Mhm. We know that a deregulated person cannot handle another deregulated person.
Mhm.
So we have
Mhm.
to talk about having your footing to be prepared to engage in that conversation. It takes so much to handle someone else that's deregulated, but if you're coming at the situation on 3 hours of rest, you will not show up the best version of you and handle that in a way where you feel proud of how you handled it, that you didn't take it personally, like we like to say, that you diffused the situation, that you responded instead of reacted. So it's intimately connected, de-escalation and resilience, because you can't handle it the best of your ability if you're not in a great state to handle it.
Yes, it creates that conditioning for there to be the margin to actually think, to be in the thinking part of or the creative part of your brain instead of the survival place. Do you have a success story that you can share with us?
Specifically about de-escalation.
I just want to hear about a success, whether it's around de-escalation, an educator who came back to
Yeah,
themselves. You
yeah. I
pick.
mean, I think one of my most exciting. Well, there's two. I'll tell you the one. back to your leadership point, because this is a nod to why leadership is so important to get this work before we reach the staff. We worked with an elementary school in Frisco, Texas. There was a lovely principal who was all in, loved the work, encouraged her staff to do the work. We worked with her staff and her, and she had a very deregulated parent. And she had the knowledge of how to use the strategies, but also was able to just shut down the conversation and not allow the parent to disrespect her staff member. That was huge. That also created norms in her school that you will not speak to my staff in a disrespectful way. We won't allow that. So you agree when you engage with us in a meeting that you do not do that. I loved that because every single one of her teachers told me how much they just adored her and felt truly supported. And I think that's huge. That's one scenario, but then there's another one here in New Jersey. I had a lovely woman who was having the worst teaching year of her 20-year career, came to me on the verge of quitting. And I remember working with her and sharing some of the strategies that we did. And it literally turned her around and she became so much more in love with her work. But here's the other thing. She started to show up differently and be an even larger contribution to her teaching community, to her parents, to her students. She's like, clearly the district's getting more out of me now because I'm calibrated and I know how to take better care of me. She's like, and before they were getting fumes and I was angry and I was resentful. She's like, now it's a completely different experience. She's like, it's a win-win for the investment they made in working with me.
Yes.
This is
And
amazing.
I love that concept of being calibrated and how you're showing up and able to, because the situation didn't change, the
No,
environment didn't
no,
change.
exactly.
What was going on, her rituals, her routines, the things that she consistently was doing for herself is where the shift happened. And
Hmm.
I'm a strong believer in rituals and routines, mostly for me because I'm a morning person. It's morning routines and my
Yeah.
morning rituals. Do you have some morning routines or rituals that help you get calibrated for the day?
I do. I do. I'm so glad you asked that. Listen, I'll be honest with you. When I'm coaching people, I'm very real about what I'm dealing with. I am a very, I'm on the journey. I always say this to them. Listen, I'm on the journey with you. I'm right next to you. Like, I don't have it figured out. I'm trying to figure it out just like you. So, if I didn't do the very things that I suggest, I'd be a fraud. So I have staples in my life that I do, and I wouldn't be recommending them if I didn't believe in them. So, two of the things that I do for myself to just get my head right every morning is I have a gratitude journal on my phone called the 5 minute journal app, where it asks me for three new things I'm grateful for. So now that's going to force any kind of like negative thinking I've got going to some positive, which is amazing. So I do gratitude. And I also practice meditation for at least 8 minutes every morning before I start my day.
Ah, same, same, same. I just had a session with a group of women actually, and talking about the first 20 minutes of the morning. And if
Mhm.
you're reaching for your cell phone, if you're checking your email, if you're immediately going to something that is going to cause a stress response in your system, that's the first thing you're reaching for, you're actually setting that calibration to be off centered and going into the deepest parts of your habits. And so, yeah, I love those. I love those. I do a devotion and 10 minutes of breathing, just and practice paying attention to my breath and getting really present all before I even get out of the bed. Once the
So
feet are on the
good.
floor.
Yeah. But it's so good. It's like, it's so little, but it's so significant. Like I say, it sets the cadence for your whole day if you take just a little bit of time for yourself. Like one of the things I learned early on from initially coaching educators and anyone. I mean, I was having corporate people tell me this. I learned they were falling into their day. Like they were hitting snooze, they were grabbing their phone, they're running out of their bed, getting in the shower, grabbing the coffee, sitting behind traffic, immediately at the effects of their life, instead of saying, no, 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 I'm going to take 10 minutes just for me. I'm going to have a little bit of a slow start. And when they shift that, it literally shifts their cadence of how the day unfolds, right? Because it's not high stress. They're like really intentional about how the day at least begins, and then everything can go sideways later, but at least they're giving themselves that space for themselves.
It sounds like really setting intention and prioritizing, recognizing that they will get the benefits in return if they make that investment up front. The
Yes.
it is so significant when you think of one thing that you truly want listeners to walk away with from this conversation. What would you say that is?
Stop waiting for your external circumstances to be any different than they are in order to take better care of you. Because there's never, ever going to be enough time. There's never, ever going to be the perfect situation. I promise you that if you just start taking a little bit of time for yourself, whether it's I'm going to get 8 hours of sleep tonight, or I'm going to start my day and do 15 minutes just for me, whatever it looks like for you, stop waiting for external things to dictate that you take care of yourself or not. Just do it.
Just do it. Stop waiting. This is the time. There is no better time than right now. When you and every time I've asked you for a tip, a strategy, a level of insight, you have kept it really simple. What are your thoughts about also having it be measurable?
Oh, well, it's very measurable in my program. So, yeah, so no, I think this is a great question because we can't fix what we're not present to. So that's why we do a very in-depth resilience audit.
Mhm.
Two of the things we measure consistently throughout the series when we work together is energy and stress. And anyone can do this on their own accord, right? I simply ask them on a scale from 1 to 5, how much energy do you feel like you've had this week? And a lot of people will admit, they'll take a step back and they'll go, "Oh, not so good." And then we start to unpack the why, right? You can unpack the why. Well, what could you shift to make it a little bit like you could get more energy? Well, I could probably stop watching Netflix till 1 in the morning, right? And then the other piece is stress. What's your stress level 1 to 5? Anyone can do this. So it's the checking in with yourself to say, all right, 1 to 5, what's my stress? 1 to 5, what's my energy? If your energy is low and your stress is high, there's the opportunity to make some changes, do something different, because we know the definition of insanity is hoping things change and continuing to do the same thing. So it's just check in with yourself. Self-awareness is the greatest gift that we have.
Yes. Check in with yourself and a simple scale and allowing yourself to do that consistently and then making a different choice. Shift something, be intentional. But I'm thinking about those educators and even people just in their office now who are literally being triggered by experiences. So it might not be that they did not have a good morning routine, but they got into a situation or an experience and they experienced a trigger moment. What role does resilience play in navigating triggers?
Such a great question, too. And one of the things I'm really proud about what we do, what our coaches are doing, and our resilience trainers slash coaches, is we're having people all going back to this conversation of joy. We're having them take a step back and really reflect on their level of joy and their triggers and their traumas. So the one thing I'm asking them, because I know the line here, I don't step over that line, is I get them present to, do you have triggers? Do you have traumas? You do. Well, have you ever unpacked that with a clinical professional? Well, no. Well, it's compromising your joy. If I ask you immediately, I ask you if you have trauma in your past, and you immediately go, well, absolutely. And then I follow up and say, have you ever worked with someone to navigate that, unpack it, and heal from that? And they go, oh, no. I invite them to take a second look at that, because it ultimately will compromise their joy. And so I look at that too, the trigger being similarly like, you're triggered. So is there an opportunity for you to look closer at that with a clinical professional?
Yes, what's at the root of it, and actually go for help so that you can continue to operate. You're on this journey, but you keep having this misstep. It's a limp that you could begin to seek professional help and support with. Did I
Yep.
hear you say that there's also an opportunity to gauge your joy?
I'm just asking them basics, right? So
Mhm.
if there's trauma, chances are it's like sitting right here and they've not addressed it. And so it's going to cloud their capacity for joy. So I'm not measuring joy with them. I'm just getting them to see the impact. It's all about getting people to see the impact of the choices and their experiences before. I think they have to have that before they actually make change.
Because you've shared, and as I read some of the material that you provided for us, that this really starts at a mindset shift. Even
Yeah.
before the tangible elements, there's a mindset shift. What
Mhm.
is a core belief you have that you have found to keep you in a place of being able to bounce forward?
Yeah, mindset is a funny thing. I've done a lot of work on myself, and I'm still on the journey. My business partner and I talk about this all the time. Like, we're still on the journey. Mindset is everything, and if we allow ourselves almost to sit in the victim mindset, it's really hard to handle adversity or stress. So, one of the very important questions that I ask everybody that comes to me is, do you believe life happens to you or life is happening for you? And if they say life is happening to me, that says a lot about how they're viewing stress and adversity. And stress and adversity shows up every single day. So if it shows up every single day and they're wearing the victim jacket, think about how much harder their experiences are, because no one's going to stop giving them stress and adversity. They're constantly going to be sitting in that woe is me. So I just invite them to consider life is unfolding and revealing to us our own capacity for resilience through the stress and adversity,
Mhm.
and being curious about it instead of feeling as the victim is really the first step in this.
Mhm.
So it says a lot when I meet with someone and they believe that. And I just try to get them to consider that, and invite them to consider it's an opportunity for them to realize what their true capacity is to overcome it, and get them to reflect on a past moment that they've overcome, and that how they can see that that served them.
Yes, that there was a lesson even in that challenging moment or that trial, that there was something that they still were able to gain in
Yes.
order to move forward because they're still here. There's
Yes.
there's so many connected dots that just resonated with me as I think back to your earlier comments around culture and shifting from complaining and being more
Yeah.
conscious of
Yeah.
what we're saying, what we're believing, how we're navigating. That also connects to that mindset shift. If I feel like I'm the victim, I'm going to complain all the time. So it
Absolutely.
creates that ripple effect of I shift the perspective that I'm actually a victor. I
Yeah.
actually am strong, and then
Yes.
recognize what's within my power to be able
Yeah.
to shift this moment as opposed to complain about the moment.
And it's funny, we did an experiment. My business partner and I did it, and then we said, let's open it up to every teacher that we're working with. And we all did it together. We did the complaining and judgment detox, right? So the goal wasn't to abstain altogether. The goal was to just start to simply reflect and catch yourself.
Yeah.
Right. And so
Mhm.
that's the first step. So like we would just confess, we would hop on our group calls because we do cohort coaching as well in groups. And we just confess it. Like I was like, yeah, I was driving down the street and I saw some woman in some outfit and I don't know who she is, but like I was judging her. Like, why would I do that? What's the point of that? Right. But I caught myself and I realized that serves no one. Like, why are you doing it?
And you're bringing it out into the open so that people can become more honest about it, not hold on to it, so that they can move it out of the way.
It doesn't make you feel good to complain or to judge another person. So, if the name of the game is to feel as good as possible, we have to stop and reflect on what we're thinking about and how we are like operating our day-to-day experience.
Mm. And stay in the driver's seat of all of it. Are you reading something really good right now that is inspiring, or listening something to something really good right now that is continuing to fill your cup?
Oh, heck yeah. So, so I don't want to get this wrong. So I have been like binge watching and repeatedly watching. Do you know who Lewis Howes is?
No, tell me.
So Lewis Howes is an amazing, I guess he's a public figure. He has his own podcast, but he did an interview series with a gentleman named David Guillaume
Mhm.
about manifesting. Guillaume, Ghiyyam. And he's got this whole series on YouTube where he's talking about manifesting. He's talking about how we sabotage ourselves from what we want. He talks about relationships. So, highly recommend checking out his latest series with David Guillaume. It's powerful.
Wow. When we can find continued resources to continue to remind us, to keep us in the mindset that we want to maintain, sometimes it's going to take practicing and reading and staying in something so that it shifts, before we begin to produce our own thing. I love it. I often ask, as we come to the close of our time, it always goes by so fast. As we come to the close of our time, I always ask our guests to consider the listener who is really just tuning in and they're at their end. And so I'm asking you to consider the educator who has had to juggle the tests, the lesson plans, the yelling, the not enough time, didn't get to have their special today, had to work through lunch, got through the traffic in order to get home, and sat down in the chair. And just by chance, they're listening to our conversation. What do you say to that educator as we close out?
I think the first thing I would want to say to them is that you matter. You matter. You are so much more than an educator. And we thank you for the work that you do. And you deserve joy. You deserve to show up to the people that love you the best way that you can. And you cannot keep pouring from an empty cup. You have got to figure a way to help yourself reclaim your footing because life is meant to be enjoyed and you deserve joy.
You deserve joy. There is no better way to end this conversation than with that word. How can people follow you, get connected with you, learn more about what you're working on?
Oh, thank you. So my second home is LinkedIn. You can find me there, Michelle E. Dickinson, or our website, resilienceasalifestyle.com. You can certainly learn more about what we do there. And I would love to hear from your listeners. So feel free to reach out to me. I would love to hear.
Oh, thank you so much, Michelle. I appreciate your expertise and the lens that you have provided us. It is wonderful to be in a space with a like-minded professional who really sees this as not just the tips or the tools or the strategy that you pull out of your back pocket, but this is how we are approaching life in the face of the challenge, in the face of the uncertainty, in the face of the stress. Unfortunately, we can't take those things away, but you can absolutely begin to invest in you. And so, Michelle, I thank you. I thank you. I thank you for logging in and for being a part of our flip side conversation. And as I always say every week, we are committing every single session, every single episode this year around recognizing that, yes, life is coming at us, but that doesn't mean that you have to shrink back or fall apart. It actually is an opportunity for you to stay connected, to collaborate, to find your footing. And yes, resilience is forward, bouncing forward. So we look forward to you right here, same time, same place, next week on the flip side. We'll see you then.